So I went ahead and ordered a couple of miniature orchids, but before they arrive, I'm going to make a few more adjustments. I kind of want to place this in an oven and see if warming it up and making it a little malleable without melting it will prevent it from rocking. You know, if I turn it around, you can see how the ends, it's so warped, it's kind of depressing. Like here you can see the gap, and if I flip it over, you can see how it rocks. Anyway, let's see. I went ahead to Lowe's and bought me the smallest one of these Tillandsias I could find, so I can have a second one up here, even though that's close to the bulb. And I did order a light bulb that would give a filament more on the inside. But also, even after I repaired the so-called pond, it still was draining water, so I'm going to create a new pond to replace that one. This pond essentially is could be replaced by the screw cap of a vitamin bottle, but they come in all sorts of colors, and I wanted something that would blend in with the environment. But I'm going to be using this old plastic cup and just cut that part. The fact that it's translucent, it may make it even look like there's more water in there, look a little deeper or something. But before I do all that, I want to go ahead and glue this Tillandsia in there. Now, if you notice, it's curving up, so I'm going to glue it that way, but I want to remove the broken leaves at the bottom. And hopefully, when I get the new light fixture in, it will still hopefully it won't, I think I can just keep taking more and more off there, but hopefully it won't burn under the light, especially since it's an LED. But if it does, I'll worry about it later. And this one wasn't in the best shape. It had a couple broken leaves, but it was the smallest one, and that's what I was looking for. So let's see if that works. And I wanted to get that in before this piece of wood, so this wood here, before it soaked up too much water. You can see how water here's lighter in color, here's darker, where moisture has been going up. But that looks good. I may want to remove a little extra moss because that top part is a little too thick. And over time, I am going to be slowly replacing this moss with live moss and other things as I get more not Spanish moss, but sphagnum moss, and start to thin it out. But I'm going to go ahead and remove the old pond. Let me, I kept watering this, that now it's really well hydrated, and especially when I kept losing ponds. But I want to show you guys something interesting too. Recall the 2 mosquitoes I put in? Well, believe it or not, they're still alive. Earlier I was looking at the gap in there. There was a mosquito. So even though this looked like it drained and the mosquitoes would have dried out, they're still in there. Yes, if you see them right over here, you can see the little larva. Let me zoom in. There we go. So here you can see that the larva survived even though it dried up. So now what I'm going to do is work on replacing that pond with one that will be sure not to drain any water. So I have this cup. It has an edge. I have a box cutter, so I'm armed and dangerous. And let me move that over. I'm just going to take this and just cut along the edge. And just keep cutting a little bit at a time until it breaks free. So I'm basically squeezing just a little bit to cover. Oh no. Guess what I did? I cracked this whole thing now. Yeah. So since that cup was a rigid plastic, it broke. I'm going to use one that's a smoother plastic. And as you can see here, now the mosquitoes are still moving around in there. It's not dripping. I don't know if it just got soaked up and moved into the peat moss, and that's probably why it drained. But anyway, I'm going to try this cup. So I'm going to hold it right there and turn. This one's going to be a little deeper too. Okay, at least I have the line I drew as a guide. And that's pretty decent. One thing I can do is press this against like a clothing iron and get the edge smooth, but I don't think it's sharp. Okay, that's good enough. Sure helps to have sharp scissors. Okay, so now let me move this old pond, instead of this old house, this old pond, and see how this will fit in there. Looks like we have a winner. You know, it's a little deeper than the other, so it's not going in as deep into the moss as the other one, so I may have to create, like remove a little bit of moss, peat moss that is, and get that out of the way. And this way I'll get this pond recessed in there a lot better. Okay, now I can flatten that. Then much better. And then I take this out and just fill up the edges, fix that area too. You know, if I have a little bit peat moss in the pond, that's fine too, because it will conceal better, but right now I'm worried more about just getting it in there with water and looking clean. Then later I can always add more or peat moss in there if I wanted to. Whoops. So I'm trying to get, since the pond goes so close to the edge, I'm trying to get some peat moss in between. I'm going to have to squirt the edge of the glass here to wash this down, and then it will fill in the edge. Okay. So now I'm going to take this and dump it along with the mosquitoes in there. Okay, that one doesn't want to go in, does it? Make sure I don't have any of my mosquitoes in here. I don't see them. Now I can squirt water in here. First along the edge to clean it up. And then in the pond. And this pond should hold water unlike the other one. Get that area straight. There we go. This pond actually looks a lot better, doesn't it? Okay, it just preheated to 225 degrees and the thing seems like it's starting to get soft. I didn't want it too hot, but I knew I had to get over 200 degrees because a few months ago I bought a popcorn popper to roast coffee in, and it had the built-in thermostat at 180 something degrees, and this is in Fahrenheit, and it wasn't hot enough to roast beans dark enough, so I couldn't even get a medium roast. So I bypassed the thermostat, and before I knew it, it was still cold and I was roasting outside and it started melting the popcorn popper. So hopefully this temperature makes it malleable enough that when I put a piece of wax paper on top and the other sheet, like another pan, to press it down, it will be flat as it cools. So let me try that. I don't know if it's hot enough, but I'm going to press it down with another sheet on top for a few minutes and see if it will cool and stay flat. I ended up heating it to around 251 degrees, and as you can see, it's now flat. Still hot, but a little curved, but a lot flatter than before, so at least now it will work better. I'm going to just let it sit with the weight pressing down on it a little longer, and it actually worked. So now, as you can see, it sits underneath the lip and it doesn't rock. So it really straightened out. This side, it's still a little curved, as you can see, but it's still below the lip, which means the light fixture will sit on top well. Now, as you can see, there's all this grease on it from the wax paper. So I'm going to clean this off, set the light hood, and show you how this looks now with the extra Tillandsia and also with the pond. What I did today, as you can see, is I added that Tillandsia near the top, and it's a Tillandsia ionantha, and I put a new pond for the Azolla carolina in there and the mosquito larvae. Hopefully they won't escape but will be eaten by my carnies. And I straightened out the bladderwort flower that's in the foreground from the sundew and the butterwort in the background on the left side, but I'm gonna have to let me first show you a little more contrast right there, showing the Tillandsia ionantha that I put on top. It's not as red as the one at the bottom or as big, but hopefully using an LED light, even though this is a 40-watt equivalent, it will not be hot and cause it to start heat burning or anything. And I'm actually going to move this now a little closer. And I tried to straighten out the butterwort flower, the bladderwort flower, and it seems like it's leaning a little bit towards the sundew. Hopefully it will open up sometime soon. And right there I have the pond, and as I get sphagnum moss to grow in there and spread around there, there's a little bit of sphagnum near the butterwort, and as that spreads, I may eventually take some and seed this area. I'll have a nice green edge and filled with the Azolla. And here is the crown of today's part of the build of the project. I have the lid on and this thing, the hood, and it's not even shaking. So I'm so excited that I was able to get this flattened out. It's not perfectly flat, but flattened out enough to where it will work. And hopefully it won't warp, since now I'm using an LED bulb, whereas back in the 90s I used a 15-watt incandescent, and that's what usually you put in with these tanks when you bought them back in the 90s from Walmart. I hope you enjoyed this part of my 2-gallon aquarium to terrarium conversion. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe.